Hi, good morning. Aloha, buenos dias, tudo bem? Hi, welcome everyone. Hi, I am Alex with Empowering Survivors, and I'm so happy that you're here. Welcome. And as I said here in the chat, aloha, aloha, aloha in Hawaiian means not only like a greeting, like hi, but it also means love and fellowship. And so, like I always say, keep it empowering. But in this case, spread aloha to your fellow chatters. And before we get into today's topic, which is going to be a big one, I want to just have our thoughts and prayers for the hurricane that is going to hit Florida, I believe this afternoon. I live in Florida, but I also have family close. I'm not in the path of the hurricane, but I do have family close to it. They'll be okay because they live more central. But yeah, let's just hold a moment of silence for thoughts and prayers for everyone who is affected by the hurricane. Because after it hits Florida, usually it'll go to another state in the southeast. So, and I actually was part of. I was a little kid during Hurricane Andrew, which hit Miami-Dade County, and I've been part of many other hurricanes since. So, it is a huge upending your life. And so, even though actually as a kid, my family's house where I lived, we got flooded. So we were displaced and we had to go to another place for, I think maybe like 6 months. And I was starting the school year. Very similar scenario actually as the Maui wildfires, in which it was like the day before school started. I think it was very similar for during Hurricane Andrew. We were starting school like the next day or 2 days later, and we were displaced, and we started school weeks later. So yeah, and that's what we're talking about today. And actually, it happened in August as well. It was August 24th, if I'm not mistaken, Hurricane Andrew. So we're talking about, where are these children? Where are these children? And I've heard, God, I'm already getting heated. I've heard murmurings about this now for a few days, and there's finally some proof, at least as far as the Department of Education in Hawaii has put out some information on this. So we'll go ahead and let me go ahead and share some of this. And I'm going to start with TLDR. Like, what is it? TLDR? I don't know. Didn't read, like too long, didn't read. TLDR. Yeah, too long, didn't read. Because I want to kind of give a little recap, and then we're going to listen to the Board of Education. It's not a press conference, but it was an open meeting, and we're going to hear from the superintendent and his report. So I think we'll start with, actually, I'm just going to show the report. Let's start with that. I'll show the report, and so that you could see what I am talking about. Excuse me. There are 2,000 approximately students that are not accounted for with the school system. So the Lahaina fires happened on August 8th, and it's now over 3 weeks since then. So this is from the Department of Education. We're going to listen later to the Superintendent Keith Hayashi. This is the report that he gave the Department of Education, to the Board of Education last week on the 24th. And this is from his own data as of August 21st, there were 3,001 students enrolled in I guess it's called the Lahaina Luna Complex, which is probably like the area that includes those four schools in that area, public schools in that area. And as of August 21st, 538 students had re-enrolled in other public schools, right? Because they can't go into the schools yet, into the 4 schools yet, because they're not, one was completely destroyed, is not able to be inhabited or entered. And the other 3 sustained wind damage. And also there's concern for, breathing and toxicity. Students who have enrolled in the state distance learning program, so that's, let's say, about almost 1,000. And then it says the remainder of students who have not re-enrolled in another public school or opted for distance learning may have moved out of state, enrolled in private schools. So they haven't re-enrolled, but they don't necessarily know where they are. So this is 2,000. Now, I think that number has dropped a little bit, as I'll show you in a New York Times article here in a moment. But it's 2,000 students. Where are these students? Where are they? It's quite concerning. Now, keeping in mind that there is not, their cell phone service is still spotty. Some people don't even have Wi-Fi. Some of them may have died, right? We don't know all the details yet, but still quite concerning. So I'll stop sharing that. And then I wanted to share an article that we found, or that I found, that's it actually just came out from the New York Times, and it kind of discusses a little bit about, why is link not showing up? Here we are. After losing their homes, Lahaina parents try to save their school community. This was written, when was this written? I think this just came out yesterday or the day before. Nearly 60% of Lahaina students haven't enrolled in classes after the deadly fire, and families are yearning to rebuild their school network for educational and emotional support. Well, so because I'm a nerd and I studied, actually in my undergrad, I studied finance, I know that number is not the number from the report. So I think that they got an updated number. The New York Times got an updated number. So let's say if there's 3,001 students, I'm just doing the calculator. There were 3,001 students enrolled pre-fire, and 60% haven't re-enrolled. That's 1,800. So I think that from that 2025 number to the New York Times just got an updated number, and that's about 1,800. Still close to 2,000, but the number has dropped a little bit. So 1,800 students haven't re-enrolled. Where are they? And how come the Department of Education doesn't know where they are? Right? This has been it's been a heated topic. Reporters are asking the mayor of Maui. The mayor of Maui is like shutting down press conferences once people start asking those questions. It's getting pretty heated. The flames that ripped, this is a New York Times article, the flames that ripped through Lahaina needed only a few hours to take nearly everything from Aina Kohler, her house, her surfing school and cafe, and her parents' home where she was raised. Excuse me. 3 weeks later, the flames are gone, but they have continued to take, robbing Miss Kohler's 12-year-old son and hundreds of other children of what was supposed to be their first few weeks of the school year. The deadly fire on August 8th destroyed King Kamehameha the third elementary school in Lahaina, and forced all 3 of the other public schools in town to close until officials determined that the air and water are safe. Oh, that's right. That's the other thing. The water is supposedly not potable. It's not drinkable. As of Monday, nearly 60%, so about 1,800, let's say, approximately, of the 3,000 public school students in Lahaina, a historic town in West Maui, had not enrolled in another public school or signed up for remote classes, essentially vanishing from the school system. Miss Kohler's son, Kimo Varona, whose first day of 6th grade was supposed to be the day after the fire, still hasn't returned to class weeks later as his family stayed at a West Maui house that was offered as a refuge by a family they had never met. Kimo, whose education was already upended by COVID-19 closures, longs for some sense of normalcy with his classmates. The kids are having to grow up really fast right now, said Ms. Kohler, who is a firefighter on Maui who helped respond to the Lahaina blaze and has turned her focus to finding an adequate school program for her son. So this is her. She actually is a firefighter. So imagine. So she's got an insider view on what's happening as well. And she can't even get one of her kids enrolled in a school. She's trying to get him enrolled into a school. Here, in a striking example of how the fire resulted in uneven consequences, Kini, who was the girl, received a spot at the private Maui Preparatory Academy and has returned to school, but Kimo was not accepted and is trying to find other options. I think that they're twins. In recent interviews, parents and teachers said that they lived in West Maui because of the tight-knit community there, and that they now fear losing it if the state cannot quickly reopen schools in Lahaina. There are no obvious solutions for families who find themselves in a situation that was unimaginable a month ago, back when students and parents were buying school supplies and getting excited about their new teachers. Many of Lahaina's families are staying with friends or family elsewhere on Maui in emergency hotels on the island or in other parts of Hawaii. Some have moved to the mainland, and 2 Lahaina children have been confirmed dead, a 7-year-old boy and a 14-year-old boy, though officials still have not identified most of the 115 victims who are known to have died, and the ultimate death toll is believed to be higher. Now, that's also really strange because they've been saying 115 victims death toll for a couple of weeks now. And we all know that there's probably, like it says, it's believed to be higher, but how come that death toll hasn't increased? Is the county not wanting to say more deaths? It's very interesting. For now, the Department of Education has offered 2 options for Lahaina students. Take the bus to schools elsewhere on Maui or enroll in a remote learning program, similar to how students learned during COVID-19 closures. Ms. Kohler is considering signing up Kimo for remote classes, but believes students should return to school in the West Maui community they know as home as soon as possible. The 3 other public schools in Lahaina remain largely intact with only some damage from wind, debris, and ash. Ms. Kohler and many other parents believe the focus should be on reopening those campuses and ensuring that they are safe. They do not want their children to ride the bus for 45 minutes each way on a road that they say is often closed because of car accidents or other hazards. Some also doubt the school system ability to run buses efficiently. I don't have children yet, but I definitely would not want my children riding a bus 45 minutes each way. Like, there's got to be a better way. As far as the young kids go, we as parents want to keep them real close right now. Absolutely. I definitely agree. I wouldn't want my little kids going on a bus 45 minutes each way and kind of like after this disaster and what could happen. And yeah, no, absolutely. And like what happened with the fires moving so quickly, I would be worried there might be another wildfire that happens, right? And if it can move so quickly, what could happen to your children? I would not want to send off my children for 45 minutes on a bus. They've been through the fire 5 years ago. I guess there was another wildfire there. They've been through COVID, and now they're going through all of our houses burning down. But challenges remain. Some parents fear the possible health concerns that may persist after the fire and the potential emotional strain on children who would attend schools steps away from where their town was all but destroyed and so many neighbors died. Teachers and school employees are also struggling to stabilize their lives. Michelle DeBaldo, a 2nd grade special education teacher at King Kamehameha III Elementary School, has been living in a hotel since escaping the fire, which also burned down her home and charred most of what she owned. At least 103 teachers and employees of Lahaina schools have reported that their homes burned, but all staff members are believed to have survived the fire. Keith Hayashi, the superintendent of the Hawaii's public school system, said at a board meeting last week, which we're going to listen to him in just a bit. And this is the King Kamehameha, the third school, which is not open. It said it destroyed the school. Teachers have been on paid administrative leave since the fire. Ms. Devaldo said that she wanted to get back to teaching to help her students, but that she did not have what she needed to return. I miss my kids. I love my job more than anything. How am I supposed to go back to work when I don't have clothes to work in? I lost everything. On Monday, Ms. Debaldo and other Lahaina teachers met at a hotel with education department officials and, with many of them crying, shared their stories and criticism. Okay, so I am going to end here from this article and start sharing the actual video of what happened at the department meeting. Let's see if I can pull this up. And hello, if you're tuning in live, feel free to say where you're coming from or where you're joining from. And if you haven't hit the thumbs up, I'd appreciate it if you do that. Help me get this video out to more people. And all right, let's see here. So this is the, there's the Department of Education, then there's of Hawaii, then there's the Board of Education, and the Board of Education was held this meeting, and they did like the sunshine laws, which allows people to testify, to give a testimony or to testify, share their story for whatever the government or whatever, these, whatever government officials have to say, and on all different items. And apparently there were 30 people who signed up to testify. And we're not going to listen to all of them, but we're going to listen to a couple of them. And we're also going to listen to the superintendent who gave his report. And so, there's been a lot of criticism because the students, the teachers, and the students, and the parents of the students are like, there is no organization. People were being told to just, to suck it up, take their off days, take their personal days, and there was no communication and just a lot of disorganization as far as when to go back to school. So we'll listen to some of them, and I thought it was really interesting.
As of 1:30, this meeting is a remote meeting under section 92-3.7 Hawaii revised statutes, and includes an in-person meeting location which is open to the public.
Okay, sorry about that. I just wanted to make sure that you can hear. All right. So I'm going to I have some, this is a 2-hour, almost 3-hour meeting. We are not listening to all of that. I'm just going to get through the highlights of it. And let's see here. I think let's start with the superintendent. So this is the superintendent of Hawaii, of the Department of Education of Hawaii. And his name is Keith Hamashi. And I'm going to put it on 1.25 just because I would normally listen to this at 1.75. But all right.
Aloha Board Chair Haruki, Vice Chair Bakarse, and members of the board. Keith Hayashi, Superintendent. I'd like to acknowledge those who took the time to testify here today, and everyone who shared their thoughts through written testimony. Your firsthand experiences of loss and trauma and grief as educators, as parents, as community members, were very powerful and humbling. Please know that your concerns are being heard and that you have my commitment that the department will do everything to support you, our students, our families, and our school communities. It's been just over 2 weeks since the devastating wildfires on Maui that left our entire state and country shaken, and our hearts burdened with pain and grief. I extend my deepest condolences to all those who have suffered loss and displacement during this tragedy. You heard from many of our teachers who have lost their homes. In total, at least 103 faculty and staff from our 4 Lahaina schools have told us their homes were burned. At some point, the 4 schools have reported that all employees have been accounted for as safe. But we know so many lives have been lost, and many more are still missing. Our hearts go out to those grieving the loss of loved ones. In times like these, there is strength and comfort in coming together as a united community, bound by our shared experiences and our determination to heal and rebuild. This is a very dynamic situation. We are trying to make the best decisions we can with the information that we have, which is constantly changing and evolving, all while prioritizing the health and safety of our students and of our staff. We understand that clear and frequent communication is a lifeline during times of crisis. For our impacted staff and students closest to this tragedy, the department has been working with Complex Area Superintendent Rebecca Winkie, her team, and our 4 Lahaina principals to provide support and information to employees and families. Given the connectivity and cell phone issues facing West Maui in the days after the fire, we shifted our communications approach. Since August 8th, we have provided a total of 18 updates via text messages for the Lahaina principals to send directly to their families and staff, each broken up to meet the 160-character limit for the mass messaging platform used. We've programmed our staff emails to be in plain text format so that they load more easily on phones. Since August 8th, we have sent 7 staff emails related to the fires, including a message from me to all staff the day after the fires, expressing the department's condolences, initial response efforts, and ways to help our Maui schools and our ohana. We have also been providing updates to news media on Maui, including the radio stations. Since August 8th, the department has sent out 13 media alerts and news releases related to the fires and responded to more than 80 media inquiries to ensure accurate information is being reported. For voice communications, while the campuses are closed and school phone lines are down, we forwarded the 4 Lahaina schools' phone lines to a centralized voice message system that our state office is checking regularly. Since August 8th, 170 voicemails have been retrieved and nearly all have been responded to. On Monday, we launched a hotline to support families and staff who are facing internet challenges and who need assistance with things like enrollment, school information, or resources. The department has received 150 calls on the hotline over the last 3 days and has not missed a call. We know there is always room for improvement, and we pledge to strengthen our lines of communication. We will work to ensure that our internal and external audiences are informed on the steps being taken to address the many challenges ahead. In addition to improving communication, we are unwavering in our commitment to support our employees and students who have been affected by this tragedy. We understand the emotional toll this is taking, and we are dedicated to providing the resources, counseling, and assistance needed to navigate these very difficult times. We are providing students and staff with mental health support and crisis counseling, both in person and through telehealth counseling. Students are able to access in-person counseling services at school or via virtual services through Hazel Health. Both students and staff can also access in-person counseling services at selected community-based organizations and locations by phone through an HMSA partner or by calling or texting the Hawaii Cares hotline. Psychological first aid training facilitated by the National Child Traumatic Stress Network has also been offered to all employees to help prepare them for the return of students following this disaster. We are working with the network on short and long-term plans to continue to address the evolving mental health needs of both students and staff. This coming Monday and Tuesday, we'll be convening with the employees of our 4 impacted Lahaina schools at an off-site location to help them transition back to work. During this time, we'll be providing staff with access to OTM representatives, mental health training and services, and we'll be having discussions about how we can all move forward together. On Wednesday, we're working with our complex area and Lahaina principals to organize 2 community meetings, one in West Maui and one in Central Maui, to hear from families and community members. I would like to thank and recognize our Maui Community Homeless Concerns Liaison, Julian Kahele and Val Aguari, who have been working tirelessly on the ground in Lahaina to assist students displaced by the wildfires. We deeply appreciate them and all of our liaisons and our Education for Homeless Children and Youth team members, led by Toby Partner, who have been stepping in to help with entering student information, reaching out to families, and making sure our Maui families are supported. I also want to give a big mahalo to our Lahaina principals, Jennifer Everett, Gary Kanamori, Stacy Brooklyn, and Richard Caroso, as well as our Maui Complex Area Superintendents, Rebecca Winky and Desiree Sides, for their dedication and care for the Maui community. This team has been leading their teams while experiencing personal loss themselves. Kaz Sides has also been instrumental in coordinating efforts for our schools in upcountry Maui to clean damages from wind, ash, and soot, and to mitigate water contamination issues related to the Kula wildfire. I'll now transition to the slide presentation.
Okay, I just wanted to do a quick recap there that he said, this is the superintendent of the Department of Education of Hawaii. He said that there were 103 teachers lost their homes, but all employees have been accounted for and all employees are alive. They did start a hotline earlier last week to respond to any requests that people had. I think he did say that they did send some text messages and emails and things like that. The challenge with that, though, is that many people had no form of communication. So maybe they weren't getting all of that communication. And they're coordinating 2 community meetings today. I'm going to see if I can find that before we wrap today. I'll see if what time that's at. It'll probably be, if I had to imagine, it'd probably be after work so that people who do work are able to attend. But maybe not. Maybe it's during the day. I don't know. They also said that they're going to be having this week, they were having sessions with teachers to help them with mental health concerns, with how to deal with the children that are coming back, the kids, the students coming back, and other things like that. So that should be interesting. Somebody who's going to speak later, who I might highlight, said, 2 days isn't enough support when the teachers need the mental health counseling themselves for them to be now supporting students, right? So this is why there are sunshine laws, and why sunshine laws allow the community to speak out and testify and give their feedback, because people do things in a vacuum. They don't know, they haven't lived through it. And so they need the community feedback, even if it can be sometimes contentious or, seem like it's criticism, but it's important to get that feedback, right? It's like anything, you have if you only have a one-way communication, you're never going to get feedback back to see if you see how to respond or whether the message is being relayed. So it's very, very important to have this open communication with the community.
This first slide focuses on the Lahaina area. The orange and red spots indicate the impact of the wildfires, and the location of our 4 public schools in West Maui are shown. King Kamehameha III Elementary, which was severely damaged beyond repair. Princess Nahi'ena Elementary, Lahaina Intermediate, and Lahaina Luna High School, which are still standing, but closed to students and staff for health and safety reasons. The next slide, illustrates the attendance boundary lines for each of the schools spanning West Maui. On the right, it shows where King Kamehameha III Elementary student population resides in West Maui, on the right upper box. The campus had been located in Lahaina Town. Princess Nahi'ena Elementary services students living across Lahaina Town and south to Launiopoko and Olowalu on the bottom right-hand box. Those elementary schools feed into Lahaina Intermediate and Lahaina Luna High School, shown on the left. This next slide is an overview of student enrollment, staff, and the status of each of our Lahaina schools. Our employees at these schools remain on paid administrative leave through tomorrow as cleanup and safety assessments continue. As mentioned earlier, starting Monday, faculty and staff will be reporting to a centralized off-site location in Kapalua to come together, receive mental health supports, have time to meet as school teams, and receive training and information on how to support students and each other. We are also organizing resource booths to provide information on housing options, FEMA assistance, Red Cross supports, and other resources. The next 2 slides show photos of our Lahaina schools. Starting with King Kamehameha III Elementary, as you can see, sadly, the campus sustained extensive fire damage. It is in the impact zone and not accessible to the public. Lahaina Luna, Lahaina Intermediate, and Princess Nahi'ena Elementary campuses fortunately were not directly impacted by flames, but sustained wind damage, as you can see from the photos on this slide. But the overall structure of campus buildings and classrooms are in good condition. In a later slide, we'll go over the environmental testing underway to ensure these campuses can safely reopen at some point. Some of the immediate and ongoing coordination efforts underway are listed on this slide. I'll just highlight a few. We meet at least daily with both Maui complex area superintendents to ensure executive leadership is aware of issues, receive updates, and is providing needed supports. We attend daily meetings with federal, state, and county agencies and the governor. The department also has met with U.S. Department of Education's disaster response team. As we said and done from the beginning, caring for the health and welfare of our staff and students is of the utmost importance. We have our community liaisons on the ground in Lahaina, working directly with impacted families since day one. We're providing mental health supports and crisis counseling for staff and students, both in person and by phone and virtually. We've established an expedited enrollment process for families seeking to re-enroll at other public schools. On the next slide, the health and safety assessments are taking time due to the continuously evolving situations, but we are committed to the urgency of this work. This involves environmental testing to be sure that the air, water, soil, and soot are certified as safe by county, state, and federal authorities. We work with the Department of Health to install air quality monitors at our 3 schools. The real-time data can be found at maps.purpleair.com. We are prepared to purchase bottled water if necessary, pending the results of the continuing water analysis. No matter what, we will not reopen schools unless we have assurances that it is safe. We're prepared to professionally clean the campus when given the go-ahead, as we've done at King Kekaulike High School. For King Kamehameha III, we fully recognize and respect that any discussion around a permanent future school cannot take place without discussions with the school community. On the next slide, we are still in the process of contacting our families. This slide shows the enrollment and movement of Lahaina students. The breakdown of 2,025 students that are not enrolled that we know of elsewhere. On the next slide, this next slide illustrates the work that we've done related to environmental testing, that we've been doing environmental testing, and we're committed to that. Health and safety clearance by county, state, and our federal officials, as I shared, is definitely, we need those assurances for us to reopen those schools. Related to temporary relocation, we're evaluating options for temporary relocation of King Kamehameha III Elementary, alternative locations if environmental testing delays reopening takes longer. Some important things to note that from some of the information that we've been getting is that between 4 and 8 weeks for an interim solution for IT, and 8 to 12 weeks or perhaps for the final fiber solution. In addressing our medium and long-term needs, again, the health and safety during debris cleanup and removal is very important. Accelerating the learning of affected students, we are looking at options that we can implement and put in place to support our students there. And definitely continued communication and planning with our school communities is critically important. This next slide illustrates some of the mental health supports that we have in place, counseling services for our staff and for our students. And this information can be found on our webpage. At the very top, there is a scrolling bar and a bit.ly link there. If you click on to that link, all of this information can be found. We also stood up a Google site that is mobile friendly to provide information and resources. On Monday, we launched a hotline, as I shared, to support families and staff who are facing internet challenges and who need assistance with things like enrollment, school information, or resources. The department has received 150 calls, as I shared, over the hotline over the last 3 days, and we are committed to continuing to providing timely updates and information for our families and for our employees. That concludes my slide deck presentation. I am open for any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent. At this time, before we ask for any testimony, I just want to say that the written testimony that was received prior to the start of the meeting has already been publicly posted on the board's website, and board members.
Okay, so I'm gonna just forward. Well, let me just say one thing here. As somebody, as a communications professional, I've been an officer and a publicist for different companies, and including during COVID for a healthcare organization. Crisis communications was kept coming up for me, right? There's enough of the emergency management that has to happen, and then the different organizations need to communicate that to the different audiences. He mentioned getting in touch with the employees, the staff. They haven't been able to contact almost, well, they said 2,025 students as of the New York Times article that was posted yesterday. It said approximately 1,800. So almost 2,000 students that have not re-enrolled. They don't know where they are. They have to contact them. So it's just been this is definitely trying times, but I always like to say, I don't like to blame people, but I like to look at cases like this as ways for us to learn, right? What learning lessons do we have? And children lost or not accounted for is a huge problem. So what is being done to do that, right? Like children are supposed to be enrolled in school unless they're homeschooled or something else, right? So the fact that they haven't been able to get a hold of that many children is a huge, huge problem. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over a few of the different testifiers, which are some of the people who are speaking. And let's take a listen to a few of those.
Yes. Please proceed. Hello, Chair Haruki and members of the board. Just over 48 hours ago, HSTA submitted testimony, but with today's meeting scheduled, a lot of unknowns are coming together as of yesterday, so I'll also address other issues that have come to light. Community input first would have made the most sense. Lahaina already feels that they're being ignored, and if the community meeting next week, Wednesday, is just to tell people decisions that have been made without their input, that won't go down well. There has to be an openness to changing whatever plans are in place if the community says otherwise. Mental health supports need to be of high quality and specialized. We can't expect our few school counselors to be able to deal with the overwhelming trauma those in our schools are dealing with. 2 days of training will not be enough for our teachers to handle the trauma as the list of the missing is supposedly soon to come. I refer you to the late testimony from the American Academy of Pediatrics Hawaii chapter and others for valuable information on how to go about that. Some of those who work outside of Lahaina but live there are being treated without the grace that they deserve. They've not only lost their home, but their entire community. Being told to suck it up and just use your personal days, of which they only have 6 personal days for the entire year, was just heartless. Let them convert more of their sick leave to personal leave this year to attend to the business that they need to, or establish a bank of leave for others to be able to contribute to. Just this morning, a teacher at a Central Maui elementary school said their school and another one have taken in 60 to 70 new students with no new personnel, and class sizes are skyrocketing. We need to reallocate personnel for the needs of these schools, and it needs to happen as soon as possible. Deploy district and state office staff from elsewhere in the state to assist, just like what was done during the height of COVID. Make sure that the needs of our other Maui schools are not lost in the mix. And of course, safety is paramount. Air testing now will be different than when the search mode transitions to the cleanup mode, and ash and other toxins will be in the air. I know and I hope you've read the testimony submitted and appreciate those who are testifying in person or remotely today. Listen to what they're saying and act accordingly. Make decisions for Lahaina only after you know the visions from Lahaina. Mahalo.
Justin Collado, followed by Tevo Medeiros. Justin, can you hear us? Sorry, Justin, try again. No. Oh, Justin is not online. Moving on to Tevo Medeiros in person, followed by Victoria Zubinich and Ashley Olsen. Tevo, you're up.
He aloha no he aloha. Mai Hawaii nui o ke awe ai ke one e oni I hau. A hiki ke kukui pio ole I ka makani kau ula. Aloha kākou. O wau o kumu Tevo Medeiros. He kama wau no lele. He kumu kai puni wau ma ke kula kai puni o Lahaina luna. I'm a representative of the Hawaiian immersion community, P through 12 of Lahaina. As a community that has lost so much, we have discussed and determined 2 collective goals between Kumu, Haumana, and Makua to help our keiki through the aftermath of this tragedy. The first being the relocation of all Kula Kaiapuni o Lahaina, P through 12, to a temporary site. Second, advocating for a new P through 12 Kaiapuni site in Lahaina long term. As of right now, all of our students and families are scattered and have lost everything. For many, the ability for them to attend Hawaiian immersion in their kaiaulu, their community, has been an uphill battle for years. For generations, we have fought tirelessly just for our keiki to be afforded a Hawaiian education in Lahaina past 5th grade. After all of these years, we finally made a clear pathway, P through 12, and after over 120 years, we've graduated 4 classes of Hawaiian language speakers and that were educated entirely in Hawaiian. Now again, we're being told what is best for our community and the well-being and education for our children. I implore you all to not just think about these haumana as nothing more than numbers, but to recognize the history and culture of their land and their schools. For almost all of them, this is a multi-generational rite of passage, graduating from Lahaina Luna High School. I ask you to look at them as the next generations of Hawaiian scholars. At one point in time, Lahaina Luna was once the epitome of Hawaiian education. And with the kokua of the BOE, it can be again. If these goals are met, it will be a new beginning for Hawaiian education in Lahaina. It will make way for the next generations of Hawaiian scholars, following in the footsteps of their kua'ana, their older siblings, like David Malo, the first superintendent of Hawaii, Samuel Kamako, prolific writer and judge, and Timoteo Ha'alilio, Hawaiian patriot and politician. Aloha nui, mahalo.
Mahalo, Mr. Medeiros. Thank you very much for being here.
Up next is Victoria Zubinich, and followed by Ashley Olsen and Sesame Shim. Victoria?
Victoria Zubinich, Lahaina High School. I'm the Curriculum AP Testing and Title I Coordinator, and I'm here speaking as an individual. I would first like to acknowledge the work and thank our principal, Richard Caroso. His constant attempt to do what is right for the students and faculty of our school has made me feel like someone in the department values me, and the same can be said for your other West Maui administrators. The debt this board owes them cannot be repaid. My time today is to comment on the response of the department to West Maui teachers, those who work or live in Lahaina. The lack of communication with our employer has been abhorrent. It took our employer over 5 days to reach out to us directly and say, I'm sorry, to acknowledge any of the pain or struggle that we may be experiencing. Even though the entire superintendent team stood in front of us on August 15th to say, take all the time that you need, they have waited until the last moment to tell us our fate for the coming days. It has felt like we've been held hostage, waiting for a breadcrumb of information to know what to do next. Our local administrative team has tried to soothe teachers messaging through school-wide emails, the anxiety and stress this is causing. And all our admin can say is, I don't know. We have folks that have been in a state of trauma for weeks, and they can't calm down because they don't know if Monday we're gonna have to go to school and look into the faces of 30 children who may have lost their homes. We have reporters asking us for the names of our missing students and scam lawyers and insurance headaches. You're not helping, you're adding to our stress. So many teachers have come to me to ask if the DOE is helping us with housing. Is it helping us to raise money? What is the DOE doing to help affected employees? And I have to say, I don't know. Local businesses and restaurants who lost everything are doing more for their employees. Many of my friends that are teachers lost everything. Our initial estimates were that 25 to 35% of all West Maui teachers lost everything. Where are you? You haven't even asked. But these are not the most egregious things that have happened to our educators. I listened in the first days after the fire to teachers who lost their home in Lahaina but work in Central Maui. And because those Central Maui schools were open on Monday, they were told to report to work. And if you weren't ready, take a personal day. Many of these educators are parents. When they received the re-enrollment email, there were many calls. Have I been relocated? How can I send my child to a school on the other side when I don't know where I'll live? Will I have to commute an hour to drop off or pick up my child and then another hour to work? Like the other parents in the community I talk to, nobody wants to put that distance between themselves and their child after this disaster. I can't even talk to you about yesterday's memo. No one from state offices have asked these educators to ask their homes if they're ready. No one has asked them if they're okay. No one has asked if we're prepared to drive through Lahaina daily, watching the number of crosses grow on the road. No one has asked if they need bereavement time because their families have died. No one. What I cannot understand in response to this department is what has always shocked me in my 12 years of working here, that the folks in central offices care more about the convoluted internal policies that they've made up and covering themselves than taking care of our teachers. We have had 5 West Maui teachers, maybe more, that were terminated because of paperwork.
Thank you very much, Victoria.
Wow. Whew. Her testimony is probably one of the most powerful because she's talking directly about some of these awful things that have happened. Like they said, people were asked to go to school to like report back to school, but if they couldn't make it or they weren't ready, they were asked to take personal time, which teachers don't really get a lot of, or they don't really get a lot of personal time to begin with. Nobody's asking if they need bereavement support. She said, I don't know, it's obviously I can't attest to this, confirm this, but she said that that 5 teachers that she knows of were terminated because of paperwork. Her estimate is that 25 to 30% of the Lahaina West Maui teachers have lost everything. And so, yeah, that's super impactful. I think we're just going to go one more testifier here.
Next up is Ashley Olsen, followed by Sesame Shim, followed by Justin Huey. Ashley.
Ashley Olsen, Lahaina High School. I want to make it clear that I'm speaking as an individual today, and I also am one of the very fortunate ones who still has a habitable home with power and potable water. I haven't lost a single personal possession, but on August 8th, 2023, I lost my town, and I'm still waiting to find out how many and who are gone forever. Nothing will ever be the same. Those of us north of Lahaina had lost all connectivity to the outside world by 5 p.m. At 10 p.m., a colleague and her husband and their cats showed up at my home as they'd been re-evacuated from the Lahaina Civic Center. It was our first inkling of how bad things were. I didn't have access to news reports or social media until I attended an HSTA meeting in Kihei on Saturday. But you, all of you, had that access. Every superintendent, deputy, and assistant superintendent, every Board of Education member had full access to the media that documented the utter devastation of Lahaina, and it should have been clear to the meanest intelligence that we would not be able to return to school for weeks at the least. And yet closure information was dribbled out 2 to 3 days at a time. The first DOE email came on Sunday to our school email, to people who had no internet, no computer, to many people who had no home. Bearing this in mind, I want to extend my deepest thanks to the 4 Westside principals, Richard Caruso, Stacy Bookland, Gary Kanamori, and Jennifer Everett, as well as Kaz Becky Winky, who have gallantly worked to keep teachers and the community informed and to fill the void left by state leadership. They understand that sending HTML-rich emails to people who had no way to access them was a prime example of cluelessness. In Superintendent Hayashi's comments, it's clear that there is still no real understanding of just how isolated and cut off from communication West Maui residents, unhomed or not, really are. Emotional health was also mentioned. Virtual counseling, sure. Speaking of emotional health, telling folks that schools would be closed for 2 to 3 days at a time, updating closure information 24 hours or less in advance has taken a toll on all of us, and it is a prime example of how not to do things. I was going to share 2 text messages threads with you, but I just don't think I need to. The idea of passing through the burn zone 2 times a day is one that makes me want to vomit. Let me just say that this was not part of the crisis counseling we'd hoped for. And now in 2 days, teachers will be counseled for our trauma, and then we're supposed to be trained to support our students in 2 days. Get real. I want to remind you of the unique nature of West Maui that apparently our leaders don't understand. I want to remind you that sending out emails doesn't mean they can be received. That was 30 seconds. I want to remind you that we have yet to receive an accurate death count, let alone the names of those who are gone. Talking about supporting students and talking about providing counseling doesn't actually make it so. Talking about caring is trumped by actions that don't necessarily support the words. And I'd like to remind you all that the buck stops at the top. And right now the top kind of sucks. Thank you for your time today.
Oof. So we've got some very heated, very passionate teachers that are sharing what's really happening though, right? I mean, I think it's important. This is exactly why they have sunshine laws, so that people can share their personal stories, even if they're angry, even if they're hurt, even if they're in pain. I think it's important for them to share the real, what's really going on, so that the leadership understands, right? Because sometimes leadership might be out of touch with what's really happening. She addressed several of those points where she thought, she said, okay, just because you're sending email doesn't mean that they're being received. And that's not necessarily the fault of the Department of Education, but what else can be done, And like, I think the previous person said that local restaurants and businesses that lost everything were doing more for their employees. So and this is, usually the Board of Education is one of the largest employers in a community, because they employ all the teachers, all the staff of the schools, all the public school staff anyways. So I thought that was very, very interesting. And we're going to go to, let's see, one more testifier, and then let's hear.
So do we have Haley? Okay, Haley is on. Can you say something, Haley? Can you hear us?
Van Noord.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. I'm speaking as an individual. I'm a teacher at Lahaina Intermediate and have been since 2009. I want to know who has accounted for the staff and students. Our student activities coordinator, who lost her home in the fire, worked nonstop to account for each and every staff member while trying to console her own daughter. This should have been the responsibility of the Department of Education, not school level leaders who had just lost everything. We're still getting calls from the FBI to make sure that everyone has been accounted for. Why have you not yet accounted for our students? You need to give teachers time to prepare. We cannot find out from our students that their classmates have died. Who is responsible for deciding when our campuses are safe to return? Our school level leaders are reporting clean air and clean water and some dust in the classrooms comparable to what we as teachers had to clean ourselves after the 2018 fire. I'd like to share something a colleague of mine wrote. She titled this Lahaina Strong. Something I've heard a lot and initially told myself is we or I need to be strong for the keiki. My thoughts, what if putting on a brave face or acting strong and together all the time isn't the type of strong our keiki need? What if it's not what our hearts need? What if we could be authentic and vulnerable and learn how to get through this immense tragedy together? I think if we show up as humans with our keiki and each other, it can help us all navigate this darkness and find glimmers of joy. Learn coping skills, learn how to be strong together. Showing up the best we can, which is messy and unsure sometimes and strong other times, because it's okay to be messy and unsure and not placing any expectations in their minds to process this quicker than able. None of us know how to do this. Over 1,000 people. Who am I to put on an act that I know how to manage or process such a trauma just because I am an adult? Strong to me is not hiding my tears or mustering up a business as usual facade for the keiki. That doesn't honor my reality or my heart. When I'm back in the classroom with my Lahaina students, I will show up for them in the only way I know how, authentically and with love. I'm going to have days when I feel stronger and more hopeful, or even distracted enough to move forward. We will have fun. I'm going to have days when I grieve, and when it feels like I sometimes don't know what to do. And they'll have times when they don't know what to do. The stages of grief are not linear, and it can all be welcome. Our keiki do need us to be strong, but finding strength with them, alongside them. Yesterday, 2 weeks after everything, I volunteered at EAU Intermediate, and even though it was fresh new pain to see my trauma reflected back at me on Lahaina keiki faces and to see others playing volleyball, it helped me remember that with the keiki is where I need to be. We played charades, and a sweet boy who didn't even know me asked, "You're from Lahaina too?" And he came over, reached out his arms, and hugged me. The superintendent said, "Communication is a lifeline." Well, you failed us. You've left us for dead with no communication.
Wow. I think she brought up so many good points that I wanted to just reiterate. One is, we talk a lot of times, we say kids are really resilient, right? They can bounce back. But a lot of times it's because they don't really understand what's happening. And sometimes kids are better at they're good at expressing their feelings and emotions. But if they don't understand what's happening, then they might stuff it and compartmentalize because they don't know what else to do. It's a coping mechanism. And, I know from somebody who lived through a natural disaster, lost my home, and having to deal with my parents' emotions, it's so difficult to try to navigate and figure out what's happening as a child. And then also, trying to figure out what your parents and what your family members are doing and thinking. So I thought that was really, they call in Hawaiian, they say keiki is kids, or the kids or the children. And I love how she said, being strong doesn't mean not, covering up your tears or trying to be business as usual. Being strong can also is actually vulnerability is strength. Vulnerability is courage. Being authentic is courageous and strong. So I think that's really important, allowing them to grieve, allowing them to have that grieving process. And so I thought that was really good. And then she said, I guess the superintendent said the communication is a lifeline. Well, she said they've failed because if people aren't receiving the messages and there is no communication. And I know that they changed this. They said HTML emails aren't going through when you have limited cell capability, right? So they ended up changing that. But still, I think it's important. I mean, these are learning lessons, right? Like I hadn't even thought of that. HTML, I'm going to make a note for that. For, if I ever have to be in a crisis situation where I'm sending through, a natural disaster and people have limited capability. They changed their communications strategy, but I think that they probably need a crisis communication strategy, and they might not have had that in place, it sounds like. So, all right, one last little bit here. I want to listen to some of the Maui board members. who have listened to 30 testimonies. And let's see what they had to say. We're just going to listen to a couple of them.
Haley Duclo. Haley, welcome.
Velina nui akako apau. I wanted to first start, of course, by just sending.
Oh, just to,
Aloha.
so this is the first person who's speaking. She's actually one of the newer Board of Education members, and she is the representative of Maui. So she's the first board member who's speaking.
To Kapo Eolele, the people of Lahaina, and really thanking everybody who came today. Amidst everything that they're dealing with, to share their thoughts and voices with us as we figure out how we will provide that support to them. I have been talking to a lot of people in Lahaina, and I think, and reading the testimony and putting all the notes down, adding little checks, just so that I can, sort of realize what you need and what you're asking for. And what I hear, what I've heard often, I think what everybody heard today was that your ability to maintain your connection to your place is probably the most important thing, place and people. So I think that we all hear you and will prioritize those ideas, and I don't know if, just hearing just all the different ways that people connect to place and people of that area is very deep, and it kind of makes policy testing, it kind of just makes those things seem very small and insignificant. And I think, I know that everybody in the room is trying to deal with this in the best way that they can, but I do think that we really do need to have more boots on the ground to talk to people. A lot of people brought up the importance of trauma-informed care. I think that's something that, it's been only 2 weeks, but 2 weeks feels like a really long time. And I think the first 2 weeks has been really about the immediate needs of people. And I think this is sort of transitioning into more long-term needs, such as trauma-informed care, really looking into what kind of educational options there will be out in the West Side. Taking a step back at how we've been communicating, and it's everybody, how we've all been thinking about communicating and how that's happened, and just the input that from everybody saying that it has not been sufficient. And I think that's across the board. I live on Maui. I mean, across the board, people feel like that has not been effective or enough. And I don't know what those things are, but I think as we begin to think about what we do moving forward, they've outlined very well the areas that we need to improve in, and the things that are important to that community. And I am, of course, committed to continuing to work with that community and figure out how we can continue to have those conversations in more meaningful ways and actually let that inform our decision making. So I do think that, these are the times that you gotta suspend all the great policies, not all of them, but that cannot be primary, right? It's the well-being of our people first, and then we'll get to the other stuff. But yeah, I mean, like I said, everybody I've talked to, everybody, that everybody's trying to figure out how to address this. And I think listening to the people who have gone through it, sitting with them, experiencing that is what we kind of need to be able to make better decisions wherever we're at. So, mahalo nui.
Mahalo, Kahele. Let me move on to Vice Chair Prakasi.
Aloha nui mai ka. Board Member Kamehameha Schools. E nā ohana, na haumana, na kumu, ke kai ulu o Lahaina. Lohe ia. E ko ka papahana, Paiapuni, ua lohe ia. Mahalo nui ko o hapai ana i na manao, ko o lana lana, i ke iwa pākiki. E la no kākou. Loa ka wā e ala kai, loa ka wā e hahai. I nā he mau ala kai kupono mākou, i ke mākou ka wā e hahai ai. Mahalo anui. Superintendent, board members, families, I'm really appreciative and basically thanked our community for sharing with us their manao. I know as a department, you're trying your best and doing what we can. What I really appreciate is this day that we have today. Our community came out. They're dealing with a lot, but they took the time to come out, to find this avenue of communication, to be able to share with us what they're going through. But not just that, to give us some solutions, some possibilities, to really share with us the depth of what they're dealing with. So I'm very appreciative to our communities for that, and I'm appreciative, Superintendent, your comments earlier on, listening to what is happening and listening to what our testifiers are sharing. They are our boots on the ground. To our Kaiapuni families, mahalo. In this trying times where I was able to speak to some of the testifiers, and some have lost everything. But they're here and they're giving us a glimmer of hope, a chance to say, let's think out of the box. Let's rebuild. Let's rebuild around our culture. Let's rebuild around our language. Give us this opportunity. Doing that can be a great beacon of hope, not just for Kaiapuni in Maui and around the state, but for the entire community. We always have to remember the greatness of specialness of Lahaina, of Lele. Resilient communities. We've heard so many stories of the community coming together, working for each other, and we heard it in these testimonies as well. There's a saying, "Ala ka ia hahai," lead and follow. As leaders, we need to know when to follow. As leaders, we need to know when certain things need to be put aside for a moment or suspended or changed. As policymakers, we have that ability to change and create new policy that would help us rebuild and be more resilient. Ke aloha nui I kalala o Kahele. I really appreciate Kahele being here and the enormity of this situation as she joins our board. But she is the right person to be here representing Maui. She is the right person that understands the depth of the situation, but also the expansiveness of the possibilities. I had a lot of questions, but I'll keep those out because really the value of today's meeting was what we heard from our families from Lahaina. Ke aloha nui a oko pakea pau I na ohana. I yield my time. Mahalo.
Mahalo, Kaimana. Councilmember, Board Member Asher.
Mahalo, Chair. I want to first begin by welcoming you, Kahele, to your first in-person board meeting. It's very timely. Mahalo. I also want to extend my sincerest thoughts to our Lahaina families. Please be strong, and we are going to be here standing strong and listen so we can support you at this time. I want to also thank you for coming together to support our communities despite what's happening to you, to help those that need help the most, especially when sometimes responses are slow to get to the communities. And I want to also thank the department through you, Superintendent. I know you guys are doing everything you possibly can to help everyone on the ground. And like everything, there is lessons to learn and areas to improve for all of us. So I really appreciate all the testimonies today. We really need them so we can move in our next step and discussion with those in mind. Sorry, I wrote something so I don't forget what I wanted to say, but time, grief, and healing, and resources. That's what Lahaina needs right now. I do not know what the next steps are, but I know they do. And today we heard them talking about being there to help. So I'm gonna urge all of us to listen because we were not there. Many times we immediately respond following policy or procedures, but sometimes we forget that there are circumstances that we were never ready for. And so no policy or procedures will help us guide us better. So we have to step back and listen to the community, because they understand everything that happened, and they understand what is best for their people. And so right now, I really urge each and every one of us to listen and to provide the support that they need during this time, because many of them lost everything. And if we rush, we are going to take away the one thing that we hope for, which is help. Yesterday, I was in Kahului Community Center trying to bring language to those that were impacted so that they can have a house, a roof above their heads. And what was really heartbreaking is the fact that they had to come all the way to Kahului to get that support. Despite everything that they were going through, they're still being extracted to come and get support. I was able to speak to a parent who asked me, do you know if my child is not going to class? I do not know where she's going, but is she going to be chronically absent? I looked at him and I said, Uncle, do you have a home? And he said, no. So I do not want you to worry about absence or testing. What you need to worry about is providing a home for your children. That is the first thing. And those are the relief that we have to ask ourselves. Are we providing those services to those families? Because I do not know how many families are not there or couldn't make it there. The ones that were helped by FEMA or Red Cross and they're in hotels or Airbnb, they're only going to be there for 21 days. What's going to happen to them after? So when we want to provide support, let's make sure that we have enough people on the ground, not people at the schools who were impacted too. We need to bring people that are not traumatized to help everyone on the ground and the families so that they can at least slowly start rebuilding. It's not going to happen now, but they need their basic needs. And that is a house, food for their kids to eat. But right now, we're trying to figure out so much. I think the community already knows what the best next step is, so we have to listen. So I'm going to humbly request that we as the board, I join Vice Chair Bacarse to look at what policies we can put in place, because right now, it's not placing our kids somewhere else. They're already traumatized. What can we do? Is there a moratorium? I do not know what it is, but we have to figure it out because they cannot learn right now. That is the last thing that we should prioritize. It is whether they have what they need, because when they don't, they can't learn. So I am here to see how I can help support our Lahaina families, but I do ask that you guys be strong. Thank you so much for being here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Kante.
Wow. So that's the last board member I wanted to listen. But from the three board members who spoke, the things that popped out to me is, you know, they were doing so much about policy, but not really making it specialized to this group of people, right? Like there might be a disaster that could affect, you know, a week of school, but this is a long-term. People lost their homes, people lost family. This is like a long-term challenge that they need to, face. The other thing is that, and it just always when it comes to schools, testing. They're like, you know, testing is the last thing that they need to worry about. So that was another thing, policies and testing. Many of them spoke about needing to have more boots on the ground. You know, it's almost like the whole ivory tower theory that like people come, you know, trying to come up with solutions for people on the ground when you're in an ivory tower. That's kind of like the metaphor that keeps coming up for me. One of the Maui board member also talked about trauma-informed care and the importance of trauma-informed care, not traumatized people trying to care for other traumatized people. And she said, the most important thing, the well-being of the people first, then we can think about the policies. And the vice chair said something that was really interesting. He said, you need to know when to lead. Leaders need to know when to lead and when to follow. And it's interesting, like in this case, you follow the direction of the community of, in this case, the Lahaina people who have a very rich culture, and how important that is. And then the last board member who spoke, who I shared, she said that, the basic support and needs need to be met first before they can worry about their kids, the kids learning. Because how do you learn when you don't have a home? How do you learn when you don't have proper water and food and your basic needs met? So she also mentioned that they need people who are not traumatized to help. So I thought that was really, really interesting. So I'm gonna stop here. I'm not gonna stop sharing here, but yeah. So what are the learning lessons that we've come up here? And this is applicable wherever you're at. There were 2,000, almost 2,000 students that have not been re-enrolled in school. That means that the Department of Education hasn't, most of those people haven't been accounted for. Where are they? Did people die? Did they leave? Did they move out of state, out of Hawaii? Did they locate to another part of Hawaii? So there's a lot of mystery there. There's a lot of unanswered questions. And communication is definitely a challenge, because if people don't have access to even cell phone, or their spotty cell phone service, or don't have access to internet, then how are they even going to communicate? How do they know, what if they're lower income families that don't really have anywhere to go or don't have any access? How are they going to find out what hotline to call, right? So there was a hotline that was launched, which is great. It's a good resource. But what if you don't even know about the hotline because you don't have any communication access? Because you don't have your phone isn't working, or maybe you don't have any money and you can't afford to contact anybody. So a lot of, again, unanswered questions. This with the children and missing children is huge. It's really important. I'm going to continue to follow up on this, because I think that this is a priority. We want children to be in school. We want them to be learning and educated, but also we want them to have their basic needs met. So right now, it sounds like only 2 children have been identified as having perished in the fire, but we also know that the death toll has stopped at 115, and there haven't been any addition. The death toll hasn't been officially increased from that. And we all believe that that death toll will increase. So I did see an article that the search and recovery have stopped. Put a little more light on me. That the search and recovery teams have stopped searching or have almost wrapped up searching on the on the mainland, on the ground, rather, not the mainland, on the ground. And they're actually doing search in the ocean now to see if they find any bodies of those who may have perished from the fire. Because as we've seen, and I've covered this before, there's the historic district of Lahaina has a street called Front Street. And they had barricades on the north side and on the south side, police barricades on the north side and the south side of Front Street. So people trying to get onto the highways, which would have been the easiest and quickest way to get out of there, were kind of rerouted in this area. And then once the area caught fire, people were trapped there. They were trapped there in their cars. So people had to literally either some people died in the fire in their cars, or they had to abandon their cars and jump into the ocean. Well, there's riptides. There's that's not exactly, they were there for hours. People were in the ocean for hours. And in some cases, they had to keep moving out into the ocean. The fire was coming out into the ocean. And if it wasn't the fire itself, there was like, because there were pictures of burnt boats. So I know that flames were at least coming. Maybe there were embers or whatever that got into the boats. If it wasn't the actual flames itself, people die from smoke inhalation. So that's another way from fire. So overall, awful. I hope that people start to get their basic needs met so that they can even begin to get communicated, start to check in with the schools, with the resources that are available to them. And, before we move on and end this, I wanted to just do a moment of silence for all the Maui residents. And there were other people, whoever was there that died, and also those who have lost their home and are now grieving the loss of loved ones and their homes. Thank you. Thank you so much for being here. I'm just going to do one other thing. Let me just double check to see if they say when the next board meetings are going to be. And I wanted to, the next department. Okay, so it is actually I was just sharing this. I think it's outdated. Or rather, it hasn't been updated. So there were supposed to be 2 public meetings today, one in West Maui and one in another part of Maui. I didn't pick up on that. Let me see if I got that. And so all it says is the latest one from August, which is the one that we just covered. So I don't know if those are going to be public. So they might not be public. Let me see, meeting notices. Let me just double check here and see if it's listed here. It was supposed to be today, and so that's not showing up here. Okay, so September 7th is something else. Okay, so nope. And this is just so that, for the Sunshine State laws, they allow the public testimony. There is a thing here where it says, click here to sign up for oral testimony. That's how people were able to sign up to speak and give their oral testimony. And then they also allowed for written testimony. So you were also able to submit your written testimony as well. Okay, so thank you so much for being here, whether you're catching us live or you're catching the recording. I really appreciate you. Thank you so much. Please, if you're watching this, please hit the thumbs up. Want to get this to more people. And if you haven't yet subscribed to the Empowering Survivors community here on YouTube, I really appreciate you joining. And, we want to be the voice for the voiceless, missing persons, survivors who need our support. And this is a really loving, supportive community. Since I love the word aloha means love and fellowship, it's a lot of aloha spread to our fellow, community members. And yes, so with that, I'll continue to cover this developing story. And yes, would love for you to just continue. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And as I like to end with that, stay safe, stay thriving. Remember to follow your intuition, trust your intuition, your gut, the answers, and make sure to keep it empowering. All right, everyone. Bye.